Alright, Trial Mob, today we have a special contestant who's going to try to make it through the trials and join the Pantheons of Champions. So today we have an event exclusive, none other than Valdo himself. So as you guys know, this was a Pia-Club exclusive. It was supposed to be a convention exclusive, but because of this whole COVID thing and the way distribution has been, there was a few changes in the specific distribution. Now, I also got a second one of these actually from Toynami, and while I haven't gotten it in hand yet, I am waiting to see if they all say or are stamped with the Pia-Club logo that we see down at the bottom. So our first time doing an event exclusive, this specific event exclusive, as you guys already know, I do have the Shadow of Asamite, so make sure you check that one out. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and start with the trials. Alright, you guys, so trial number one is going to be the box art. So as you guys know, Valdo is an event exclusive, so I was expecting a little something different, obviously. So with the Shadow of Asamite, we did get that more normal bubble wrap, bubble style box. I'm very, very happy to say that Valdo does come more with that normal, and he does come with an orange box, which I think up to this point, we've never gotten specifically an orange box, so that is something that is obviously pretty awesome. They look pretty good. The containers all look obviously exactly the same, but again, it is nice to see that this one has come back to the form factor, and that does lead to some pricing differences, which we will talk about in a second. So when it comes to Valdo, we do get a very, very nice comic accurate, I say comic accurate, I know there's no comics yet, but a very, very accurate depiction of what he looks like, though I will mention that the only difference that I see is that here in the box art, the color of that piece of the helmet right there is just a little different from the figure, and I'll show you guys that in a second. But everything else looks really nice. I like that it's showcasing the fact that he does have that robotic arm, the orange paint that we normally get on a lot of these hero figures from the Omanga group. Now let me go ahead and go around the side. We do see the Valdo, the big toy alliance on the bottom. On the back, we do get a very simple look. And actually, this is something that's really cool. It says Pia-Club at the top right. And again, I don't have a second one to tell you guys if all of them are stamped that way, but it is pretty cool to see a nice, simple, good look of him. The weapon he comes with, which is also painted in that bright orange, which is really nice. All the legalese and all the other stuff that it comes with, the barcode that we're used to. And then, of course, back to the front. So let me go ahead and give him a fail or pass real quick. So here's my thing. I'm not going to talk about value just yet because that is one of the trials, and we'll get to that later. But I will say this. He's an event exclusive, and he's the first Omanga figure that we've gotten in, I don't know, 2 years, maybe 3 years. I don't really remember when the last real Omanga figure was set, but this is not an infantry unit, this is a leader unit. And what bothers me about this one the most is that it's just kind of him just kind of standing there with his hand up. Yeah, it kind of looks cool. Yeah, it looks fairly accurate. I like that in the background we do see that there's destruction and stuff like that. Okay, cool. But I really think that they could have done more to make this something that looked more cool. Again, it's not bad looking at all. The art looks great. He does look badass. But I saw so many photos on Facebook and through KitLao and all those kinds of people that were just posting some really cool stuff that they should have adapted for this look right here. Yeah, he's cool, but I expected a little bit more out of it, considering that every single hero class that we've gotten so far has a few other soldiers in the background, and I really think it would have been to the benefit of Valdo's box art to have seen a few other Omangas in the background, maybe even stuff we haven't seen before. I mean, we do know there's a few previews of other figures coming up. It would have been dope to see a few of them around him or a few of the other guys in his regiment. So I feel that this is just a little bit plain, but on the other hand, again, very clean work. He does look really nice overall, and again, the artwork is not bad. So I will give him a pass, but it's going to be a little bit more narrow than usual because, again, I do have to be a little harder on this guy for being an event exclusive, and again, when we get to the value proposition. Alright, Trial Mob, so here we actually have Valdo out of the box looking really badass, looking exactly like the photo. I mean, again, they do a really good job of encapsulating the look, but this is where I do have to point out one thing. In terms of accuracy, if you look at this box art, it's like a blue-grayish color on his forehead. But when we get the actual Valdo in hand, it's not that color, it's more of a copper color. And that copper color follows through all the metal parts of the arm. So I'm not sure if there was an issue here when they were trying to come out with the color itself, but it doesn't actually match the box art. and usually they're really good about that, so that's just something to note. And then the color itself is a little blue, while the color of Valdo once he's out of the box is a little bit more almost brownish. So I do have to dock some points here and say that Valdo's is a little inaccurate, or maybe the box art is a little inaccurate, who knows, but it's just something to note. So let's go ahead and go through the next trial, which is overall design of Valdo. Alright, so when it comes to the overall design of this figure, I will say that I've always really liked Omanga. Their stuff is basically, because of the way that they're made and the motif of the actual army itself, they haven't really needed updates the same way some of the Argert stuff has needed updates, basically. And it's one of the reasons why even the newer Omanga stuff that we're getting is still based on the older bucks. So that is something nice to note, as this will fit perfectly in if you still have an Omanga army currently. So let's go ahead and go over the overall design. So if you've gotten anything from Omanga before, then you've seen this before. The head looks very nice. The breathing apparatuses are really cool. These guys kind of remind me of almost clone troopers. The eyes are green. That's pretty cool. The helmet itself looks pretty nice. It's casted fairly well. And then the orange that we do get on the body is really nice. I like that it's asymmetrical, right? We only have it on one arm. So overall, I do think the paint job is done very nice. The orange throughout does look pretty cool, and then of course it's weathered down more so than in what we get in the box art, so that's perfectly fine. And then as you can tell, it is a robotic arm, so if I actually show you right there, you can see right through the forearm, just indicating the fact that his right arm is in fact robotic, while his left arm is still fairly normal, so that's pretty cool. And then we do get, of course, some of those trim pieces coming down all the way through the arm. It makes them look highly robotic, and I think that is pretty badass, and that is their motif, right? They enhance people with different kinds of robotics and stuff like that. So we do get the pouches around the side. He does seem to have a kind of floating chest, as you can kind of see right there. It lends to that robotic look, as I mentioned before, but at the same time, that could be something that they update in future Omanga figures. And then we do get this cloth goods right here that goes around his, what would you call this, like a skirt? I feel like there's another name for it, not necessarily a skirt, but it does remind me a lot, again, of the ARC troopers from Star Wars, which is absolutely a good thing. So the pouches look nice. They connect right here to the back, which actually keeps this piece on, which is, again, really nice. It's got a tattered look to it. It does make him look like he's more of a leader class character, which is nice. And then that doesn't stop from the bottom side being everything we've seen before from Omanga. Overall, the armor, all the trim pieces, the articulation that you can see in the back. I kind of like this look, how it comes under the calf and it's very squared off. Again, making it look very robotic, even though from my understanding, the only piece that is robotic is the arm. And then of course we have the feet themselves, and the feet look pretty badass too. They definitely are different from anything else that we have, and again, these bucks are totally different from anything we have from any of the other armies, so there's not a lot of reuse in that sense, as it should be. And then of course he does look fairly menacing with his overall look, as he doesn't just look like a regular character, he does obviously look like a hero class. And then we do get of course that scarf under there. I haven't removed it, just like I haven't removed the whole head. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to weaken the joints. But again, for the most part, he is a lot of that goodness that we like out of the Omanga characters, but with that orange hue all throughout the arm, and the fact that it's not just an orange arm, it's supposed to be a robotic orange arm. I really like the whole motif, and the whole ARC Trooper look really goes for him. So what I will say overall, the design and of course the granulated look that these guys always have, this is definitely a pass on this trial. He looks good, he looks great, he definitely looks like a leader. If you have other Omanga characters to put around him, he's gonna look obviously like the badass is leading them, and I feel like it's always hard to kind of differentiate when you have a lot of characters that don't necessarily look very different, because he looks a lot like any other character from Omanga, but with the few things that they've put onto him, definitely make him hero class, and I really like this figure. Alright, now on the next segment, basically what we're going to be judging on this trial is going to be whether or not the accessories are any good. So for this trial right here, the accessories, we have 2. Technically, we could say we have 4, because we do have the cloth goods that come on him, which are already covered. Definitely some nice additions. And then, of course, he has his gun, which is a regular gun that we've gotten before from the Omanga figures, but this one is in the orange motif. And tell me this doesn't look like a blaster from Star Wars. Even if it's not supposed to be that, they definitely got some inspiration from that. And again, it does look really cool overall. And this peg actually goes into his back, which allows him to store the gun. So I do like the way the gun looks overall. The orange on it, definitely. I love when they color code some of this stuff to match some of these characters. I think it's really nice. And then he does come with a helmet that can go on him. And actually, let me just show you what he looks like. So there he is, no helmet. And then here he is with the helmet on him. And it fits pretty snug. It looks really nice. It really does go with the motif of the military that these guys are supposed to be portraying, which, from my understanding, Omanga is supposed to be Germany, I believe, after World War II, since Acid Rain does take place in a post-apocalyptic world after World War II. So that's it. I have to admit, this is a really hard one, guys. This is a really hard test for me to pass or fail. So on the one hand, obviously this is stuff we haven't gotten in a while, and that exclusivity and the fact that it's not easy to get right now, you know, Omanga stuff in general, because there's been no releases, I kind of want to lean towards the fact that this is a pass. But if you look at everything else that we've gotten, all the figures I've shown you guys, they all come with multiple weapons, places to store it. Even Shadow of Asamite, that doesn't have anywhere to store it, came with like 3 different guns and armor that could be taken off of her in the same way that he does too. So this is also going to be another, I'm going to say, a narrow pass. I'll pass because, again, it is cool. It is stuff that you just can't get. This isn't reused stuff. We haven't gotten this in 2 years. And he is a hero class, so he does come with a fairly unique gun that you couldn't get otherwise. So I will give him a pass for that. Now, on the next trial, this one will be articulation. So this is a different older buck. Let's see how it goes and whether or not this will be a pass or a fail. So he actually is a little bit different. So when it comes to his head, he can look up only about that much. He can look down a little bit more noticeably. Does the full 360, no problem, which actually kind of fucked up his scarf, so I'll have to deal with that later. Actually, let me see if I can fix that. Yeah, more or less. More or less, we'll go with that. And then in his shoulders, can he strike a T-pose? Yes, so he can strike a fairly large T-pose, and it's because his shoulders right here aren't directly connected. They're kind of on a ring above it, as you can tell right there. So they do kind of come up, which allows him to get a nice, easy T-pose. And just on that alone, this is a lot easier to put him in the full T-pose than anything that I've gotten from before. And then, of course, we do have that bicep swivel right at the top, so he does do a full 360. And then he does have single jointed elbows, but they come nice and above 90 degrees. You won't need more than that. And then in his hand, he does have the push-up pose. And then on the other arm, it's exactly the same, actually. So some of the older stuff didn't come with that like pistol grip hands. So you got push-up hands on both wrists. So that's just something that you're definitely gonna have to note, as it kind of gets in the way a little bit sometimes. Okay, now when it comes to his chest, again, he has a lot of mobility here, so he can go really far over left, really far over right. He can go forward about that much, which is decent enough. And he can go back about the same amount, which really puts him more at a straight pose. So that's not bad. I think that because he doesn't have to wear any armor on top of his body, since he's already encased in armor, it actually allows him to have a lot more articulation in that sense, and I do appreciate that. And then we'll bring up the skirt just a little bit so we can go ahead and see what's happening under here. So he can kick up. Wow, that's a really straight 90-degree pose, actually. Let me actually pull this down a little bit so I can be a little bit more. So yeah, that's actually pretty good. And then he is double jointed at the knee, which does allow him to kick his own ass. And actually, you can bend this in more and get a slightly different sandwich look out of the leg. So that's nice. And then when we come down to the ankle, I showed you guys earlier, he can basically go, that's that Michael Jackson right there, pointing straight down. And then he does have, because this peg right here comes in at an angle in the foot, you do get really good ankle swivel to both sides. That's really phenomenal. And then, of course, he can do, oh no, oh wow. Oh no, he can't. I'm sorry, guys. So he can't really do the splits all the way, nor do you need him to, but it's just something to note. He does have a fairly wide stance. You'll never really, in any real pose, you'll never need him to go more than this, but he does not do the splits at all. And then, of course, you do have the swivel at the top, and identical articulation on the right leg. So for the most part, he does come with a lot of the benefits of the older bucks, and maybe a few drawbacks in certain senses, but I think for the most part, this is definitely going to be a pass. He does have really good articulation, and you're going to be able to get him into any and all poses that you really want him to be in. The only real downside, I would say, is the fact that this we don't have the pistol grip wrist here. We have the push-up grip, right? So he hinges that way instead of downwards. But other than that, everything else about him is pretty good, pretty phenomenal. You're going to be able to get him in any poses you really want to strike with him. So that's going to be a pass. So when it comes to Omanga figures, Valdo is obviously one of the more badass figures that we've ever gotten. In hue of the other stuff that we've gotten before from Omanga back in the day when there were still Ori toys, this is usually how they do it. They take a character, give him a different paint job on him, maybe a different weapon, and call him basically a hero. And that's what they're doing here again in the same motif color, which is this orange flamey color, which is a really good look overall. So this Valdo looks really badass, and I sadly didn't buy Omanga stuff back in the day. I do have a couple now, like 2 Reborn Troopers and a Flame Trooper, and I'll have them in this review a little bit later. But the one thing I will mention is that if you already have a little army, maybe you missed, you have a couple of the Omanga Troopers, the regular Troopers, they're going to look absolutely phenomenal behind this guy. This is going to be kind of a must-buy for some of you, especially if you had chosen to buy the Omanga army and maybe you've just been buying a few things here and there that interested you. This is definitely going to be one of those heroes that you don't want to miss out on. It's a really good looking figure. It doesn't come with a lot of equipment, like I said, but it does come with stuff that you just can't get and that we haven't been able to get in literally years. So that exclusivity on itself is kind of what allows it to pass that trial. But be conscious of the fact that Omanga stuff, I don't feel ever really came with a lot to begin with. In the same way that the older Ori toy stuff didn't either, right? They just came with one gun, a rifle, and the armor that they came with. And this is in that older exclusive motif, so it's just something that you should be aware of. Alright you guys, now before I get into the final trial that is value, before I even talk about that, I'm going to do things just a little differently. I'm going to do these size comparisons first. So let's go ahead and see how he stacks up against some of the Omanga stuff that we have gotten before. So here we have him next to a Reborn Trooper. Now, here's the deal. We know that the Reborn Trooper buck was used before, and in the same light was given some orange highlights throughout, and that was a hero class. I don't remember that guy's name, but if you do have him, this is how much he would stack up next to Valdo. So obviously the Reborn Troopers are a lot bigger, a lot bulkier, but they follow the exact same motif in terms of the overall look of the armor, the helmet. You know, these guys look like they're obviously from the same army, which is pretty dope, and so they size up real nice with each other. As you can tell, towers over him, but again, that's how it's supposed to be, and it's a good look. Next up, this is going to be the Flame Trooper, and what's really cool about the Flame Trooper is that he already has some of those orange motifs that really already kind of match up with Valdo. As you can tell, some of the hues are different on where they went. As you can tell on the bottom right, the feet here are orange, while the feet here are a little bit more gray, but then we get more of a copper color throughout some of the metal parts, and as you can tell, some of his coloring is a little different, though I'd like to say that this does match the face right there pretty well. And then in terms of size, they are pretty close, but I don't quite... Actually, I'm pretty sure if I were to remove the backpack, they have the exact same chest, and I want to say the exact same shoulder pads and single arm. And I'll show you guys who we got his arm from in a second. Let me go ahead and show you the next one. So now here we have the Puppet Trooper, or should I say the Puppet... You know what? I actually don't remember what the full name for this is. If you guys remember, please let me know. The Puppet something, Puppet Robot. I don't remember exactly, but these were full robot AIs used by the Omanga military. And these are the guys that gave us Valdo's arm. As you can tell, it matches up perfectly. It's basically the exact same arm that they just put onto him. I like that. I like the reuse, the modularity here. If you want to custom a Valdo and paint the exact same stuff he has on one arm onto the other arm and take the left arm from the puppet, you could, and give him 2 robotic arms. And then I'm finally realizing where he got this pouch from. It's reused from an older one. So again, we're getting a lot of classic stuff that you just aren't going to be able to buy anymore unless we get some kind of re-release, which I highly doubt at this point. But you know, as you can tell, it does look really nice overall. And then actually, they all seem to have the exact same kind of back. I should have mentioned that. They all have the same kind of back where you're able to put the gun on like that. Same way over here. So again, some of the reuse is kind of nice to see, and again, it just looks very modular. It looks very like they obviously come from the same army. I mean, they have the same right arm, so that is something that's really dope, and they size up perfectly well, I would say. Let me see. You don't really get any more height out of that, but they're pretty good. I think Valdo's a little taller. All right, now here we have him next to the Shadow of Asimite, and as you can tell, he is definitely taller, but he does suffer from a little something that I would call just an older buck. I'm not really sure what they're going to do when it comes to these figures, but obviously Acid Rain over the years has gone a little bulkier, a little buffer. I mean, look how obviously large the Shadow of Asimite looks. You know, she does have those, you know, joints on the shoulders, but they make her look just as wide as he is almost. When it comes to the shoulders, and he's wearing shoulder pads on his stuff, so it is something interesting to see obviously the older bucks with the newer bucks and where they're going with some of this stuff. But he is a male character and she's a female character, and he is a little taller, though I don't know, Valdo doesn't seem to be all that big considering the fact that the girl to his right, probably if he wasn't wearing his helmet at all, would probably be the slightest bit shorter. So just something to note, right? This is just an older buck. Now here we have him next to Kelsey, and I would say that this is about the same. I'm not sure if Kelsey is shorter, or maybe just the way I have her is a little bit shorter, or maybe just because I had the Shadow of Asimite bent backwards just a little bit and it made her look taller. But Kelsey here seems to look a little bit shorter, but just as bulky. I mean, look how far those shoulders come out. She's definitely able to bench press just as much as Valdo can. So I mean, again, we're just judging older bucks with newer bucks, but it's really cool to see that they're being released on a similar schedule during a similar time. All right, and now here we have Shay, or I don't know if it's Shay or Shaya, but here we have Shay, and as you can tell, same deal as before. Very, very bulky shoulders, fairly close in height. Now she is wearing an actual helmet, and she's definitely shorter than Valdo, so at least in terms of that, he does seem to be actually taller than some of the female characters, which is good. It's nice to see that there is variety in the height of some of these figures, so that's pretty dope. I do like what I'm seeing here. Now here we have the Viper Sharpshooter, and this is gearing up to be one of my favorite figures that have been released so far, especially because of the badass sniper that he comes with that doesn't even fit on the screen. So this is something where you're going to really notice the big differences here. So as you can tell, that Sharpshooter has a much bigger shoulder, bicep, forearm, hand. Maybe not the hand, but it's obvious that his arm comes way lower and his does not. Even if I were to try to extend it a little more, it's definitely not in the same league here. The Viper Sharpshooter just has a much just a noticeably bigger buck, right? It's got a bigger buck, it's got wider shoulders, he's taller, and he's supposed to be wearing regular pants while Valdo's supposed to be wearing like armored legs. If you were to bring Valdo out of this, he's a skinny guy compared to how bulky this guy is overall and just the body proportions. So again, it is something that we do have to note, the fact that Valdo is from an older time and he's an older buck being brought into the future with some, you know, nice paint scheme and weapons and the design choice of some of the cloth stuff that really bring him into the future and make him relevant with the rest of the figures. But it is good to note that he himself is a smaller character, period, compared to things like, you know, the Sharpshooter and really probably all the male characters that we currently get through the Argert side of stuff, the Civet Company side of stuff, just basically all the main characters, male characters I should say, are going to be noticeably bulkier than him if you were to compare apples to apples. And that doesn't make it necessarily bad. He's still scaled, they're still 1/18, they're still based on the exact same kind of sizing, and a lot of this was kept in mind. But it does bear the question, are we going to end up getting an updated buck for all the Omanga stuff in the future, or are we just going to see a lot of the same stuff just done a little more nicely? Alright you guys, so we're going to now cover the last test. This is going to be the test of value, and really the value proposition, right? I'm definitely going to lay into him a little bit here. So the value proposition is going to be pass or fail dependent on two things. Now this Valdo that you see here I got from Pia-Club. It costed me, I believe, $45 plus tax and then shipping. And when you're looking at the price point of $45, I think that off top with what he is, what he comes with, you know, what he was, the fact that he's an exclusive and all the parts that you're getting, and he's an exclusive character, I would be willing to say that, especially for some of you nostalgia characters, and if you have the Omanga stuff already, this is an obvious pass in terms of value. Good looking artwork, return the form, especially after that Shadow of Asimite character, and how they decided to do that figure. So for me, I would say that if you were able to get him from Pia-Club or anywhere that was charging just $45 for him, I would say that the value proposition is going to be a pass. But this is where there's a duality. If you look at Big Bad Toy Store, if you look at Toynami, which is the other place where I bought him, he was $75.99. Now listen, I get that he's an exclusive and all that, but he is some reuse and an older buck figure from a time that has already passed. That does look cool, that does have that paint work. It is obviously very exclusive in that sense, and a few other pieces that we didn't necessarily get with some of the other figures. That's really nice, but I don't feel like the box art is all that special to warrant in $75 price tag. And it's not like he comes with anything that's revolutionary or that's like, oh shit, they really came forward and made the Omanga stuff very futuristic to go with all the releases that we've gotten from the Argert Civic Company and NAUS stuff. Not at all. It's a figure that looks 100% good with the older stuff because he fits that. It's not really an updated body in any kind of way. So if you have to pay $75 for this guy, the value proposition for me is low, and to me it's a fail, and I have to fail him in that sense. But if you're able to get him for that $45 price tag, I think that it's a little bit more in line with what's acceptable. And while I still think he kind of narrowly passes considering what all these other figures come with, and he doesn't necessarily come with all that much, I would say it's a narrow pass. And listen, if you are into Omanga stuff, you have a whole army, I mean, at $45 or $75 with the way we are as collectors, you're gonna buy this guy no matter what. Obviously, he's badass looking, he's gonna look really cool with your other Omanga army stuff, there's no denying that. But at the end of the day, a $75 price tag for something like this seems very steep. $45, it's a little bit more in line. I understand that it's hard to bring some of the older stuff back anyway, so again, I'll give them props for that. And at that $45 price point, I think this is a pass for sure, especially considering he's an event exclusive. I think that's definitely a good price. You should pick him up. But at that $75 price point, you know, I definitely bit the bullet when I bought that on Toynami. If I would have waited the extra day and been able to gotten off Pia-Club, I would have never pulled the trigger on that price point. But with what I'm doing, I kind of needed it. So that's how it's going to be, guys. I do think that overall Valdo will pass, specifically because he's an exclusive figure overall that you won't be able to get anywhere else anyway. So on the value proposition, again, I'll give him a pass. But again, it's one of those duality ones where I'm giving him that pass on the technicality, on the fact that he does pass if you get him at one price point, but fails if you get him at another one. I know it's a little convoluted, but overall, I'm going to have to give him that slide because of the kind of figure that it is. But in the future, I might not be so willing to be loose with that. All right, you guys. So overall, you can get him at a good price. I think it's a must buy. Omanga stuff is really cool, as you can tell. They have a very different aesthetic, and of course it's always nice to build up the guys that are going to fight your other army figures, like those sharpshooters like Shay, like, you know, Jesse and Kelsey and all of them. So again, you guys, this was a TBG feature. As you can tell, I have the new stuff that I'm going to be covering soon, and of course news and reviews that are going to be coming out soon enough. All right, you guys, so I will see you guys on the next feature. Deuces.